Trigger warning. This podcast is about grief. Whether you are newly bereaved or whether you have been stuck in grief for years, I do hope this podcast brings you some comfort. Grief is such a universal experience, but we all do it differently. This podcast is not about fixing you or forcing the healing process, because there is no cure for grief. It can only be absorbed, experienced, loved and cared for. So whether you are doing it privately behind closed doors, or like me, you are kicking and screaming your way through, let's support each other. This is a safe space where we can come together and share experiences. My hope is that this podcast shines a light on your path and gives you the strength to navigate your way through the grieving process. My name is Louise Bates, and I'm so pleased we connected. I'm looking forward to interviewing people who have also walked this path to find out what worked for them, in the hope that it helps you too. I'm sending you so much love and support, and I look forward to sharing this crazy journey with you. Hello and welcome to this episode of A Gift for Grief, and today I'm so pleased to have Gabriella Mitchell as my guest. Gabriella has a new company called Scattered Blooms, which she only launched in April earlier this year. Gabriella makes bespoke seed hearts to plant in memory of a loved one. These hearts can also be made to include the ashes of a loved one, including our pets, which I think is a beautiful way to honour them. So welcome, Gabriella.
Thank you very much for having me on.
You're very welcome. So it's very exciting having a new business. So how's it going?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying the challenge and it's going really well.
Oh, that's good to hear, because with economic times the way they are, it's a hard time to start a business, isn't it? So if it's going well now, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into creating Scattered Blooms?
Yeah, of course. So I, first and foremost, am a military spouse and I'm a mum to two little boys who are 1 and 4, nearly 5. And we've been moving around a lot in the military so far. We've had 4 houses, I think, in the last 5 years.
Wow.
Since my oldest was born. And so, especially since we've been in the military, it's been really hard to find a way for myself to be working.
Yeah.
With moving around, it's and having young children, I want to be there for them, but I also want to have something for myself.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of one of the main motivators for setting up a business, was finding something that would work around all of my family life. I've also really been into setting up businesses ever since I was really little. So it's been a sort of dream of mine to find something that worked. And then sort of Scattered Blooms came about sort of stemming from, I lost one grandfather 8 years ago nearly, now on my 19th birthday. So he passed away on my birthday, which was, it was a challenging and obviously very sad time for us.
Yeah.
And sort of after he passed away, it did take me a long time, but I had an ashes ring made using his ashes, which I haven't taken off since I had it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Sent to me. And then last September, I then lost my a grandfather on my dad's side, which again was a really, really tough time for the family, and it was really hard to see everyone going through that. And I wanted to find something that we could do to commemorate him within my household, but rather than having another ring made or something like that, I didn't really necessarily want to wear another piece of jewellery or feel that I wanted to find something else. And I started looking in sort of the springtime, and my son, my oldest son, and I were spending a lot of time in the garden, a lot of time growing seeds and doing all these things that we then, I did think, well, it would be lovely to plant something in his memory, do something like that in his memory. But I wanted to enjoy seeing it grow, seeing the sprouts grow and that sort of thing, and it being something that me and my children could actually do together and check them and water them together and that sort of thing. And then sort of one thing led to another, and I looked at wildflower seeds and then seed bombs, and then thought, oh, can these be made with ashes? And one thing led to another, and yeah, that's sort of where I got to today, with setting up something that we could incorporate cremation remains of our loved ones into. I've done lots of research into sort of negating ashes toxicity and all that sort of thing, and making sure that we're as beneficial to the plants and the environment as possible, but giving people a lovely way to distribute their loved ones' ashes, in addition to planting them themselves, and finding comfort in watching them grow, and the sort of healing process you can get from
Absolutely.
that, really.
It's such a beautiful idea, and also a great way to honour both your granddads as well.
Yeah. So
I'm sure it brings a lot of comfort to your customers. What sort of feedback do you tend to get?
I think it's a lot of comfort, as you said. Like it's they are enjoying the feeling of their loved one being part of all the flowers that bloom from there, and knowing that they're sort of having a new life through the plants that grow, and also the wildlife that those flowers bring in. I think it's just a level of comfort, feeling like their loved one is there with them and they can enjoy them every day in a sort of peaceful way.
Yeah, it is a lovely idea. My friend has a corner in the corner of her garden, and she's made it into a shrine for her son.
Yeah.
And I just think it would be a lovely gift for her, actually, to add to that area. But I presume you can grow them in pots as well. Yeah,
they sort of... I don't like to give too much advice, because depending on all the different ways that you can grow things, that sometimes they thrive and sometimes they don't. But we found growing them in pots does absolutely work, as does just plant. My mum, I made some with my mum's dad's ashes in, and she just put them in the ground, and all of a sudden they were like exploding, and didn't take too much care. It depends on the seeds as well. So I because they're bespoke seeds and they don't just have to be wildflower seeds, I'm sort of taking care on which seeds I choose, but I'm making them with different seeds. Will obviously depend on the type of care those will need. So wildflowers are quite easy potentially to just plant out in the ground wherever you fancy. But I did make some for my grandma, whose husband more recently passed away. And they required a little bit more care, a little bit more sort of planting in pots and then planting out and that sort of thing. So we still have to follow the guidance on whichever seeds are sort of in there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're providing a service for people who have lost a loved one. And I imagine you need to have exceptional communication skills to effectively deal with grieving families. Do you find this part hard?
I do. I think it's hard because of the level of grief that people can be experiencing, and knowing, what to say to them, how to communicate with them. Another sort of way that it does get dealt with is that there also can be a point where there almost no communication is needed, which can be helpful for people who are grieving and don't want to talk about it, just want something to be sent back to them. If needed, obviously, I will communicate in any way that somebody wants. But at the same time, an order can just be placed on my website, and it be done with as little communication as that person might want through that. But at the same time, I do find it hard. But I also find it rewarding to feel like my primary purpose is to help them with their grief, and I just try to be as careful and as caring as I can. Well, you've got a lovely nature to you. Well, do you find dealing with death on a daily basis quite challenging, or like you say, do you find it quite rewarding knowing that you're providing a comfort to people during a difficult time? I think it's a combination. I like the rewarding feeling I get from knowing that you're helping. I do find it hard, especially being a mum, when I hear about people who've lost children or that sort of thing, and that sort of hits me a bit differently. But even then, you sort of channel it into what I'm doing, to mean that sort of helps me deal with their grief, even though it's not my grief to deal with, but helps with that. I think.
I think that's good. And if you've had your own experience of grief, so it's not like you're going to it not knowing how it feels. And we all experience it at some time in our life, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't think it's something that everybody could do. I think you have to have a certain type of personality. So how do you make the seed hearts, or is it a secret recipe?
No, I am quite happy to share. So to begin with, I sort of get the ashes sent to me. So I get a care package sent that I send out, and they get returned to me with all the bits that I need. And then I take the ashes, and I have a special it's a special soil compound which is designed to mitigate the effects that the ashes can have on, particularly on plant growth.
Okay.
I mix the two together in the correct ratio for the quantity of ashes and whatever that and number of hearts I'm making.
Yeah.
And then I add a little bit of coffee because it's quite good for pest deterrent.
Oh,
so
okay.
Coffee shops will give out bags of coffee. We use our own because my husband loves to drink ground coffee.
Yes.
So we have a lot of discarded coffee grounds that it's nice to reuse, take back into it. But yeah, they're quite good for pest deterrent. So a little bit of coffee, and then clay as well to bind everything together.
Okay.
And then I add enough water and the seeds, obviously.
Yeah.
Quite important. Add enough water to bind it all together, just enough, and then press them into heart moulds. All of it's done by hand, obviously by me, and then leave them to dry. And then once they're dry, turn them out and package them all up.
And I've seen the pictures, they're packaged beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
They are absolutely gorgeous. They come very well presented.
Oh, that's good. I think that's a big part of actually receiving them is feeling like somebody's taking care and that they're in a nice...
You can tell they've been made with a lot of love.
Oh, good.
It really comes through. And I think planting seeds in memory of a loved one is a really healthy way to stay connected to our loved ones. And it's a beautiful idea to add their ashes too. Because when it comes to grief and loss, people talk about letting go and moving on, but there is a grief model called continuing bonds, which identifies that grief does not have an expiry date. And instead of moving on and letting go, we can move forward, carrying the love and the bond we have with our loved ones. And your seed hearts provide a healthy way to remember and connect to them, and our pets too. So if people listening want to get in touch and find out more info, what's the best way to reach you? Yeah,
so my website first and foremost, which is www.scatteredblooms.co.uk. It's all one word. Either that or reaching out over Facebook or Instagram, which is just at Scattered Blooms, I believe, for both of them. Should be quite easy to find, and I'm happy to discuss whatever over phone or just a message via one of the platforms.
Okay, well I'll put this information in the show notes as well, so the listeners can get in touch with you if they want to. So losing your granddad has influenced the direction of your career too.
Yeah.
So, but what helped you in your grief journey when they died?
I think asking for what I wanted probably was the key thing. And I think I learned that via not asking the first time round, especially, from like my partner or whoever was with me. If I actually felt like I needed them to do something, I shouldn't have expected them to know what it was I wanted them to do, especially if they hadn't experienced grief themselves.
Yeah.
Like, I think actually just turning around and saying, like, can you do this with me, or can I do this by myself, or whatever it was, actually helped me process it and get help.
I think that's a really good point, actually, because we expect the people close to us to be like psychic and like know what, you should know this, but they don't know, do they, unless you communicate it.
Absolutely.
That's a really good point. So did you have a lot of support around you at the time, or did you find people were unsure how to be around you, not know what to say or what to do?
It's a difficult one. With my first loss, I had my immediate family who were who'd lost with me.
Yes, yeah.
And therefore sort of had got we were trying to care for each other at the same time as
sort of
caring for
going through
ourselves
it.
and things. But I was at university at the time, and so I went back in between him passing and his funeral, which was actually really quite hard because at the time I was even more isolated, I'd not long started university and didn't have that many people around me, which in one way sort of helped and one way didn't. So yeah, it was a strange one, but then sort of second time round it was easier, although still I was more removed from the immediate family at that point, because my family live across the country from where I live now, so that was harder. But I feel like we were able to be for each other enough, and people were as caring as they could be, which was good. And
when you experience grief for the first time, you don't know what you're dealing with, do you? You don't really know what to do with it.
Absolutely not.
It's good if you've got like a good group of people around you that understand, and and if they're a bit psychic, it helps as well, doesn't it?
It does help. It does definitely help, yeah.
So, do you believe that grief has changed you in any way?
I think so. I think possibly for me, just wanting to enjoy life and enjoy the things that I have been given as much as possible.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's probably quite a cliche thing to say, but for me it really does feel like that, because we know it's, life isn't forever and things will change, and even if it's not a death, we can lose things in life that we once really cherished, and I just want to enjoy the now and what I have got, and know that one day it might change. And
because grief isn't just about losing somebody, is it? It's about the breakdown of a relationship. It can be the loss of your health, loss of finances. There's so many different types of grief out there. But what words would you choose to express your condolences to someone? Because it is so hard to get it right, isn't it?
I think so, and I think it's a really, really challenging question, because I think there's so much that surrounds somebody's grief that I actually think it would almost depend entirely on the person, the relationship they have with that person, as to know what to say. Obviously, you can say that you're sorry for their loss, because everyone probably feels some form of hurt, but I know other people that would expect them to feel sad. They might not feel sad, or they might have a very different relationship with the grief for that particular person. So I think it's quite I'd have to weigh it up depending on who it was they were dealing with and how they seem to be dealing with that grief.
There's not sort of one general answer for it, is there? And even then, you could say one thing to one person and it might be the right thing, and you can say that to somebody else and it could be completely wrong.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it is so difficult. But do you believe that your experience of grief has given you any gifts?
I think so. Well, apart from sort of my business that I'm hoping will fulfill that area of my life, I think, well, it is just, to me, it's sort of a similar way in that it's given me a chance to really appreciate what I have, and I think that is a gift in itself, knowing that I have made the most of all the time that I've got with my children and my husband and my family and things, and it can be a big regret that you aren't present enough or whatever. Absolutely. That I'm trying my best to use the grief that I've had in a positive way in it, and it's given me the gift of being more present with the people that I love.
It's really good that you can see that and take that as well, and it's again a lovely way to honour both your granddads as well. So do you have any special ways to remember your granddads? Do you have any family rituals? Have you planted any scattered blooms for them?
Yeah, we definitely have. I've done both of my grandfathers. We've made hearts and scattered them. My grandma's actually on the more recent one, grandfather that passed away. We've made tiny hearts and we're scattering them. But my other grandfather also had hearts done, and I've planted my own in my garden as well. But we also do have a family ritual, especially for my mum's dad, who passed away first, so 8 years ago, and sort of as he passed away on my birthday, we would sort of raise a toast to him on the day, acknowledging him and then being able to celebrate. And also on his birthday in June, we always have a fish and chip tea.
Oh, lovely.
My mum's especially brave and has rowan pickled egg, which is what he would have. But no, all the rest of us are a bit like, no, it's okay, we'll just have the fish and chips. But that's sort of what we do to... and I think it probably will happen with my other grandfather as well. But as it was a bit more recent and things, it's sort of getting into that and moving past it and being able to do those things will come with time.
Absolutely. I think you have to move through that rawness of grief first, don't you? Perhaps the first of everything, those anniversaries, and in time you will start to do new ways of remembering them. But another thing that came to me when you were speaking just then about the scattered bloom hearts, it's lovely for the children to talk about grief. It's an opportunity for them to be able to understand that life and death, and it's a very gentle way of starting that conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, how lovely. So I like to ask all my guests this question: what are your thoughts about the afterlife?
I want to believe in it. I think I'm not hugely religious, so from that perspective it's something that I personally have to take action in believing in, if that makes sense. Our stream of consciousness, I just can't imagine how it would just end. And I think it's sort of a source of comfort for me to think that it doesn't just end and there is something afterwards, or, whether we do get sort of reborn back into a baby's body virtually immediately after we go, or whatever it is. But yeah, it's sort of I have like a up and down relationship with how I interpret how I think things would happen after death. But it does act as a source of comfort when you think that it doesn't just end. It's like you think there's something, we just don't know what it is. Absolutely. But it's nice to think that there is something, and your granddads are there and still looking over you. Absolutely.
And do you believe that our loved ones can give us signs?
I do. Sort of after saying that I'm not sure, I genuinely do believe that things can happen in that way. And I haven't had any signs as such that I would believe were signs, but I have had dreams. Oh, so
interesting.
So yes, I do believe in signs.
So have you had like visitations in your dreams?
Yeah, I had one in particular that was extremely moving to me, and then the people that I told afterwards, where I literally felt like I was going to visit him, but then there wasn't time, and I wanted to show him my children, and it was really, really emotional, and I genuinely felt like he was there. And actually, I had another dream last night. I'm not even joking. I had a dream about him last night, and I was like, this is strange that it's happening today after knowing that I'm about to come and chat to you today. I don't necessarily feel like it's guidance. I've never had anything that said like felt like it's the right thing or the wrong thing to do, but just more like I'm with you and I'm there to, support
and I think
you.
It's amazing that you had that visitation last night, because I don't believe in coincidences. These little synchronicities are, for me, confirmation that I'm still here. And I think that's lovely. I had a dream of my son 2 nights ago, and he was in the kitchen, and we got our backs to each other, and I turned round and he was there. And then he just walked out into the garden, and I went to follow him, and he disappeared, and it was but it was a fleeting little dream, but there was that connection.
Absolutely,
that bond that we shared. It was just another little reminder. It was like every now and again he visits me in my dreams. So it was really lovely to hear somebody else mention that. You're my first guest that's brought that up, actually. So it's lovely. And I'm sure some of our listeners, that are going through grief might be able to sort of resonate with what we've experienced as well, and give them some comfort too.
Yeah, hopefully.
So if you could give your granddads a message, Gabriella, what would you say?
So my message to them would be a wish, I suppose, in that I really, really wish that they'd both been able to meet both of my children. Obviously, my first grandfather passed away several years before I had my children, and I think they would have loved loved them. And then the second grandfather met my oldest child, but wasn't well enough to meet Arlo. So it did make that. I wished that they'd been able to see them, or even to get confirmation that they can, from wherever they are, see them now. That's sort of what I'd want to say to them if I could.
And I'm sure they are in your children's lives. We can't physically see them, hear them, touch them, but energetically they can come in your dreams. They're going to be aware. Granddads live on in you, and they live on in your children too. And I think on that note, we shall end the podcast.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think you provide a wonderful service for people in their darkest days. And thank goodness there's people like you out there providing this service. And I'm going to get some for my friend who's got a little corner in her garden to get her to plant some. So thank you very, very much.
No, thank you as well. I think it's been really nice.
When it comes to the death of an elderly person, even though they may have had a long and happy life, their death should not be downplayed. Age does not invalidate the significance of a person's existence or their impact on those around them. Their departure leaves behind a void that cannot be filled. Grieving allows us to acknowledge and honour the contributions they made in our lives. Grieving helps us to process the loss, and every life deserves acknowledgement and respect, regardless of age. I love what Gabriella is doing with her Scattered Blooms business. By planting seeds in memory of a loved one, it helps you to stay connected in a healthy way. Adding ashes and knowing that the seeds will grow into a plant from your loved one's ashes can bring comfort as you watch the seeds grow from tiny seedlings into beautiful plants. This activity encourages continuing bonds. Continuing bonds theory is a concept in the field of grief and loss that challenges the traditional notion of letting go and moving on after the death of a loved one. It's important to understand that grief does not have an expiry date, and moving on is not a requirement. Instead of seeing grief as something to conquer or forget, the theory of continuing bonds highlights the significance of integration and finding ways to stay connected in a healthy way with your loved one. It acknowledges that love and attachment don't simply vanish, but rather transform and evolve in different ways. By nurturing these ongoing bonds, individuals can find comfort, meaning, and solace in their ongoing connection with their deceased loved ones. Planting seeds with the ashes of a loved one is a perfect way to continue bonding. Reminiscing about shared memories, paying visits to their memorial sites, or even having internal conversations with them are also healthy ways to maintain the connection. The love you have cannot be broken when someone dies. We don't always know what to do with this love, as we feel it has nowhere to go. Continuing bonds allows you to connect with your loved ones and feel the love, and this can help you to loosen your grief in some way. I hope you find your way of continuing bonds with your loved ones. Thank you for listening to this episode of A Gift for Grief. Please feel free to share it with your friends and family, and let's encourage others to become more grief literate. If you're struggling with your grief or worried about your mental health, please do speak to your doctor. If you would like to join me on my social media groups, check out the show notes for all the links, and I look forward to connecting with you next time. The music on this podcast was written and recorded by Matthew Bates and can be found on his 2 albums, Fight Back and Kaleidoscope.